If you have ever been with someone who seems calmer when nothing is defined, someone who relaxes the moment you stop asking what this is, where it is going, or what you mean to them, you are not imagining the pattern. For a lot of avoidant attachment, ambiguity feels safer than clarity. Not because they do not feel anything, but because clarity turns connection into responsibility. And responsibility can feel like a trap to a nervous system that learned love equals pressure. Here is the hard truth. Ambiguity is not neutral. Ambiguity is a structure. It is a structure where one person gets the comfort of closeness without the weight of commitment, and the other person pays with uncertainty while trying to stay lovable enough to finally be chosen. And if you are anxious, ambiguity does not feel like freedom. It feels like an open loop in your body, a loop you keep trying to solve with more effort, better timing, softer wording, fewer needs, more patience. Today, I'm going to show you why avoidant people often prefer ambiguity to feel safe, what it does to anxious attachment over time, how it quietly turns love into a performance, and how to shift from hope thinking to proof thinking so you stop paying for connection with your peace. The goal is not to force a label. The goal is to stop living in a bond where you have to stay unclear to be kept. And I promise you this, by the end of this episode, you will be able to tell the difference between slow, healthy pacing and avoidance disguised as maturity. You will know the exact questions that reveal capacity fast. And you will know what to do when someone tries to keep access while avoiding clarity. If this kind of clarity helps your nervous system settle, subscribe. PsychBond is a daily decoder for avoidant and anxious patterns, so you stop guessing. Let us name what ambiguity looks like in real life, because people often think it only means no label. Ambiguity is bigger than that. Ambiguity is when plans are vague, when communication has no pattern you can trust, when the future is always someday, when exclusivity is implied but never agreed, when intimacy is high but structure is low, when you feel close in private but unclear in daylight, when conflict gets soothed instead of repaired, when you keep hearing phrases like, "Let us see," "Do not overthink," "Why do we need to define it?" "I am not ready," "I do not like labels," "I like what we have," "Can we just go with the flow?" On the surface, those phrases can sound calm, even mature. But you have to look at what the structure does to your nervous system. If you cannot fully relax, if you are always waiting for the shift, if your mood is tied to their response time, if you are always wondering where you stand, then ambiguity is not a preference. It is a power position. It is not always conscious power, but it is still power. Because the person who controls definition controls consequence. Definition creates expectations. Expectations create accountability. And accountability is exactly what ambiguity avoids while still collecting benefits. That is why avoidant attachment can prefer it. Ambiguity lets them keep the door open in a way that feels regulating. No decision, no promise, no expectation. No confrontation with how much someone needs them. Ambiguity gives them the feeling of freedom while still getting closeness. And to an avoidant nervous system, that can feel like the safest version of intimacy. Now, I want to be careful. Not everyone who dislikes labels is avoidant. Not everyone who moves slowly is avoiding. There is a healthy version of slow. Healthy slow includes honesty, consistency, and movement toward clarity. Avoidant ambiguity includes charm, intimacy, and a constant refusal to anchor anything that would make the bond real. So we need a clean way to tell the difference. The difference is not their vocabulary. The difference is what happens when you ask for basics. In healthy slow, a basic question creates a real conversation and a respectful answer. In avoidant ambiguity, a basic question creates defensiveness, distance, punishment, or a sweet distraction that never answers the question. That is the line. Now let us go into the nervous system logic, because this is not about villains. This is about safety strategies. Many avoidant people grew up in environments where needs were inconvenient, criticized, ignored, or used against them. They learned that closeness comes with pressure, disappointment, criticism, or loss of freedom. They learned that being needed meant being trapped. They learned that love meant you owe something you cannot reliably give. So as adults, they can genuinely want connection and still fear the obligations that come with connection. They can crave intimacy and still feel trapped by commitment. That contradiction creates a strategy. Keep the bond warm enough to get comfort. Keep the bond undefined enough to avoid obligation. Ambiguity becomes a safety strategy. It is a way to control intensity without having to say no. Because saying no can create conflict, and conflict can feel threatening too. So instead of saying no, they say maybe. Instead of saying I cannot, they say later. Instead of saying I do not want a relationship, they say I am not ready. Instead of saying I want casual, they say why label it? That keeps the bond alive without anchoring it. Now here is the part anxious people miss. Avoidant ambiguity is not always a lack of care. It is often a fear of consequence. Consequence means, if I define this, I owe consistency. If I define this, I have to be reliable. If I define this, you can expect things from me. If I define this, I might disappoint you, and then I have to face your feelings. If I define this, I am accountable. If I define this, I might lose freedom. If I define this, I might fail, and failure might trigger shame. So ambiguity becomes their compromise. They get closeness without consequence. It feels safe to them, but it is expensive to you. Now let us talk about what it does to anxious attachment over time. Anxious attachment interprets ambiguity as a problem to solve. Your brain hates open loops. When something is clear, your body can settle. When something is unclear, your brain goes into tracking mode. Tracking mode is the state where your mind keeps checking, keeps scanning, keeps replaying, keeps trying to find the pattern. It feels like focus. It feels like obsession. It feels like you cannot stop thinking. That is not because you are weak. That is because your nervous system treats uncertainty as threat. And when threat is present, the body tries to regain safety through control. So you start trying to control the outcome. You try to be the right version of yourself. You try to say it perfectly. You try to time your needs so they will not run. You try to ask for less. You try to be chill. You try to be easy. You try to not scare them away. That is anxious attachment turning love into a performance. And performance is exhausting. Here is the trap. The avoidant person often responds well to your shrinking. When you stop asking, they relax. When you act easy, they warm up. When you pull back, they return. That creates a training system. Silence gets rewarded. Needs get punished. And over time, You start believing that your needs are the reason the relationship cannot be clear. So you start negotiating yourself into smaller and smaller positions. That is how ambiguity destroys peace. Not instantly, quietly. Now I want to give you scenes so you can feel the pattern in your body, because your body recognizes it faster than your mind admits it. Scene 1. You have a beautiful night together. They are affectionate. They hold you. They say you feel safe. Your nervous system relaxes. The next day you ask, "Hey, are we exclusive?" They go quiet. Or they say, "Why do we have to define it?" Or they say, "I do not like pressure." Your stomach drops. You backtrack. You say, "No worries, I was just asking." They soften again. You feel relief. That is not a neutral conversation. That is training. Scene 2. You ask for a plan. Just a simple plan. "What are we doing this weekend?" They say, "Let us see." You ask again. They get irritated. They say, "Why do you need to plan everything?" You feel small. You stop asking. 2 nights later, they text late at night with warmth. You feel relief. You accept the crumbs. That is ambiguity as control. Scene 3. You bring up something that hurt you. They respond with affection instead of repair. They hug you. They kiss you. They say, "Can we not do this?" You soften. Nothing changes. The ambiguity remains. Your needs remain unanchored. Scene 4. They keep you separate from their life. You do not meet friends. You do not meet family. You are intense in private and vague in daylight. They call it privacy. You feel unseen. That is ambiguity protecting their freedom while consuming your peace. Scene 5. They act committed when it benefits them. They want your loyalty, your comfort, your body, your emotional availability. But the moment you ask for clarity, they call it pressure. They want relationship benefits without relationship agreement. Now, let us name the single most important concept in this episode. Ambiguity is not just uncertainty. It is asymmetry. It means one person has more power to decide the meaning of the bond while still receiving the benefits of the bond. If you are anxious, you will often give relationship-level access, hoping clarity will arrive later. If they are avoidant, they will often accept relationship-level access while refusing agreement. That creates an imbalance where you are bonded but not held. You are invested but not secured. You are loyal but not chosen. And this is where hope thinking becomes dangerous. Hope thinking says, the good moments mean it is real. Hope thinking says, they came back, so they care. Hope thinking says, they said they miss me, so they are close to choosing me. Hope thinking makes you interpret affection as progress. But affection is not progress if it does not change structure. This is where proof thinking saves you. Proof thinking says, what happens consistently when I have needs? Proof thinking says, do they repair or do they disappear? Proof thinking says, do they make plans and keep them? Proof thinking says, do they answer simple questions without punishing me? Proof thinking says, do they move toward clarity with integrity? In relationships, patterns are proof. Moments are not. And avoidant ambiguity thrives when you keep using moments as evidence. Now, let us get practical in a way that keeps you out of overthinking. Here is the difference between a moment and a pattern. A moment is a sweet message. A moment is a passionate night. A moment is a vulnerable conversation at midnight. A moment is them saying, "You are special." A moment is them returning after silence. Patterns are what happens around those moments. Do they disappear after intimacy? Do they go vague when you ask for plans? Do they get irritated when you ask for clarity? Do they punish needs with distance? Do they soothe you with affection instead of repairing the behavior? If the pattern is unstable, the moment is not proof. It is bait. It may not be intentional bait, but it functions as bait because it keeps you investing without making the relationship safer. Now, here is the moment where anxious people lose years. They start treating the person as a project. They say, "I just need to make them feel safe." They say, "I just need to be patient." They say, "I just need to be less intense." They say, "I just need to not pressure." But look at what that does. It makes you responsible for their capacity. It makes you manage their nervous system at the expense of yours. And it keeps you inside ambiguity because you are always adapting while they stay unanchored. That is not a relationship. That is labor. Now, let us talk about why avoidant people can prefer ambiguity even when they care. A lot of avoidant nervous systems confuse freedom with safety. Freedom feels safe because it means they cannot be trapped. It means they can exit if the feeling changes. It means they can avoid the shame of failing. It means they can avoid the vulnerability of being seen. Sometimes it also means they can keep control. Not in an evil way, in a regulating way. But that regulating strategy has a cost. It prevents depth. It prevents real intimacy. Because real intimacy requires a shared agreement. It requires the courage to be known and to be accountable. So when you are with someone who prefers ambiguity, you have to stop asking, "Do they feel something?" You have to start asking, "Do they have capacity to build?" Caring is not capacity. Missing you is not capacity. Being affectionate is not capacity. Capacity is consistency, clarity, repair, integration, and nervous system respect. Capacity is the ability to stay present when things get real. Capacity is the ability to have a hard conversation without punishing you. Capacity is the ability to give you a secure place in their life, not just a warm moment. Now, I want to give you the proof questions that reveal capacity fast. These are basic adult questions, and the simplicity is the point, because a person with capacity does not need drama to answer. You ask, "What are you looking for right now?" You ask, "What does consistency look like to you?" You ask, "Are you dating other people?" You ask, "How do you handle conflict?" You ask, "What can I count on from you over the next month?" Notice what proof thinking does. It brings the bond from vibe into reality. Avoidant ambiguity reveals itself here. If someone responds with respect and clarity, you have something to work with. If someone responds with defensiveness, avoidance, irritation, silence, or a sweet distraction, you have your answer. And this is where anxious people often make the most painful mistake. They hear the dodge and interpret it as temporary. They think they are just scared. They think, if I wait, it will become clear. They think, if I do not pressure them, they will choose it on their own. That is hope thinking. Hope thinking keeps you in a bond that requires you to be smaller. Proof thinking asks one more question. If they are scared, do they still move forward with integrity? Fear is not the issue. The issue is what they do with fear. A person with capacity can be afraid and still be honest. A person without capacity uses fear as an excuse to keep access without responsibility. Now, let us make the difference between healthy slow and avoidant ambiguity even clearer, because this is where people get gaslit by their own patience. Healthy slow still has structure. It sounds like, I like you, I want to build, I move slowly, and here is what you can count on while we build. It looks like steady contact, simple plans that happen, and answers that do not punish you. Avoidant ambiguity sounds like, I like you, but do not make me define it. And the moment you ask for anything real, you feel the temperature drop. Healthy slow makes your body more settled over time. Avoidant ambiguity makes your body more alert over time. That is the simplest test. Now I want to name something else that keeps anxious people trapped. Ambiguity can feel like hope because it leaves room for a fantasy ending. Your mind fills the gap with the best possible interpretation. You start thinking, they are almost there. You start treating almost as a promise. But almost is not a promise. Almost is an open loop. It keeps you investing because you do not want to abandon a story that might still become beautiful. The way you break that spell is by asking a question that forces reality to show itself. Not a dramatic question, a simple one. Are you building a relationship with me or not? If that feels too sharp, here is a softer version that still reveals the truth. I want something steady. If you want the same, let us move toward it. If you do not, I will step back. Notice the energy. You are not threatening them. You are naming your direction. And this is important. When you step back, you do not punish. You do not lecture. You do not announce a disappearing act. You simply stop acting like you are in a relationship when there is no agreement. You stop prioritizing them. You stop making yourself available on demand. You stop giving loyalty without clarity. That is how you stop rewarding ambiguity. Now let us talk about the anxious reflex that makes this harder than it needs to be. The reflex is over-explaining. When you ask for clarity and they react, your nervous system panics and tries to earn safety with words. You give a speech. You justify your need. You soften it 10 times. You apologize. You become small. That teaches them that ambiguity is rewarded. So we replace speeches with structure. One sentence. Calm, kind, firm. Here is your sentence. I enjoy you. I want something steady. What are we building? That is it. If they dodge, you do not chase. If they punish, you do not beg. You observe. Because their response is data. Now, let us address the fear that rises when you imagine saying that sentence. The fear is, I will lose them. And you might. But listen carefully. If you can only keep someone by staying unclear, you are already losing yourself. The question is not, can I keep them? The question is, can they hold a relationship where I am a full human? A relationship that collapses under basic clarity is not stable. It is just pleasant when it is convenient. Now, let us name how self-respect erodes in ambiguity, because this is where people wake up one day and do not recognize themselves. It starts with little compromises. You stop asking for plans. You accept vagueness. You accept last minute. You start saying, I do not need much. You start saying, I do not need much. You start saying, I am fine. But your body is not fine. Your body keeps scanning. Your sleep changes. Your appetite changes. Your mood gets tied to their attention. Your confidence gets quieter. Your world gets smaller. That is dysregulation. It is the cost anxious people pay for staying in ambiguity. Now here is the cleanest way to end ambiguity without becoming dramatic. You stop giving relationship benefits without relationship agreement. If there is no clarity, you do not act exclusive. If there is no plan, you do not hold your life open. If there is no repair, you do not reset to normal. If there is no integration, you do not accept being a secret. This is not punishment. This is alignment. It is you saying, I will not give more than the relationship can hold. And here is what will happen when you do this. And I want you prepared because it is where many people fall back into hope thinking. When you stop rewarding ambiguity, the avoidant person may react in one of two ways. If they have capacity, they will feel the shift and adjust. They will clarify. They will choose. They will build. They might be uncomfortable, but they will not punish you. If they do not have capacity, they will try to pull you back with sweetness. They will increase affection. They will send warm messages. They will offer closeness. But they will still avoid structure. That is the test. You do not measure progress by warmth. You measure progress by structure. Does the bond become clearer? Does behavior become consistent? Does repair happen? Do plans get made and kept? Do you feel safe over time, not just in moments? That is proof. Now, let us talk about the most confusing part. Sometimes, the avoidant person becomes more affectionate when you pull away. This can make you believe the pull away worked, so maybe you just need to be colder. But here is the truth. Affection can be a response to loss of access, not a response to desire for structure. So your rule becomes simple. Warmth is welcome, but it is not a substitute. If they return with warmth, you stay calm and pair it with reality. You say, I like hearing from you. I also need us to be clear about what we are building. If we can do that, I am in. If not, I will step back. That is proof thinking in action. It does not beg. It does not attack. It simply refuses to be reset by a moment. Now, I want to give you a 7-day proof plan so you can get clarity quickly without spiraling. Over the next 7 days, you do 3 things. You ask one clarity question once. You set one small boundary once. And you watch behavior. Clarity question is, what are we building? Boundary is, I am not available for an undefined bond long-term. Watching behavior means you do not get reset by a sweet message. You watch if they make a plan and keep it. You watch if they handle your question with respect. You watch if they repair when there is rupture. You watch if they integrate you in one small, real-life way. After 7 days, you decide based on patterns, not the best moment. This is how you stop being hypnotized by almost chosen, almost committed, almost safe, almost there. Almost is addictive because your brain keeps thinking you are one step away. But the last 10% is often not about you. It is about their capacity. You cannot earn someone's ability to be steady. You can only observe it. And when you accept that, you stop treating love like a test you can pass with perfect behavior. You stop performing. You stop bargaining. You stop shrinking. You start choosing. And that is the shift from anxious chasing to self-respect. Now, let us land this with the core truth. Ambiguity might calm them, but it dysregulates you. And a healthy bond does not require one person to be dysregulated so the other can feel free. A healthy bond creates safety for both. Safety means clarity. Safety means consistency. Safety means you can be a full human and still be held. So, if you are listening and you are in ambiguity right now, do not panic. Do not explode. Do not send essays. Do not beg for a label. Move into proof. Ask once. Watch behavior. Choose patterns. And remember this: if clarity ruins it, it was not stable. If a basic conversation about direction makes them disappear, they were not building a relationship. They were building access. You deserve to be held. Welcome to PsychBond. You're safe here.